Brigadier Kwanazi was misrepresenting the true position. Do you agree or not?
I agree.
He is lying about the true position, exposing the municipality on the basis that there is in existence a lawful donation, which there wasn't. Is that not enough to discipline Brigadier Mkhwanazi?
It is on its own enough to proceed with the
You say it is on its own enough?
For the disciplinary process.
Yes.
Right. But as I said, my looking at it holistically, there were other factors that had to be addressed here.
You are asked about Mkhwanazi. You deflect, you go to the people he dealt with and you say they are the ones who should have done something. Mkhwanazi should not have misrepresented the facts. It's as simple as that. When you realize that all those people have not done what they are supposed to do, the answer is to investigate and charge them. On the face of these documents, Steyn did something wrong. We must investigate him. On the face of these documents, Kwabe did something wrong. We must investigate him. On the face of these documents, Mapiyeye did something wrong. We must investigate. You never did any of that. What you said to the city manager was that we don't have a good case against.
I find it hard to believe that a lawyer of your many years of experience, 28 years as you say,
Now, I say limited or narrow issue in this sense. That donation memorandum was given to Mr. Chris Steyn to support this idea that there was in fact an agreement of donation between Ekurhuleni and VIP, correct?
That's correct.
You have said that there was in fact no donation, correct?
Yes, it was not a procedural correct.
There was no donation.
Yes.
Simple and straightforward. And that immediately means that when Brigadier Kwanazi said to Chris Steyn there is in existence a donation, the proof of which is contained in the donation memorandum, he was misrepresenting the true position, correct?
It's correct. He was misrepresenting the fact that there was a donation.
Yes.
And the MOU. Also,
yes.
For example, there was a approved MOU to support the fact that there was a donation.
Is there a need to explain? The question is simple. He was misrepresenting the true position. True position being that in fact there was no donation. Correct? Yes or no? It's a simple question.
There was, if you look at following through of the process,
was there or wasn't there a donation?
There would have not.
You've already said there was not, correct?
There was no donation.
Yes. So I'm saying when Brigadier Mkhwanazi says to Mr. Chris Steyn, there is a donation and therefore please register these vehicles, he was misrepresenting the true position. It's a simple question. I don't know why you cannot simply agree that what I'm positing to you is correct.
May I, Chair? It is correct in terms of how you're positing to me that there was not donation because of the misrepresentation.
No. I'm not asking you. I'm past the question whether there was in fact a donation. I'm asking you a different question now. I'm asking you whether you agree that Brigadier Mkhwanazi was misrepresenting the true position. Do you agree or not?
I agree.
When I introduced my questions, I said I'm going to ask you questions on a very narrow or limited situation. Was that not enough to discipline Brigadier Mkhwanazi? He is lying about the true position, exposing the municipality to the possibility of these motor vehicles being registered in the name of the municipality on the basis that there is in existence a lawful donation, which there wasn't. Is that not enough to discipline Brigadier
Chair,
Mkhwanazi?
it is on its own enough to proceed with the
You say it is on its own enough?
for the disciplinary process.
Yes.
Right. But as I said, my looking at it holistically, there were other factors that had to be addressed, Chair. If I look at...
Just a minute, even before you substantiate on them. If you say that was enough to discipline Brigadier Mkhwanazi, would those factors have impacted negatively on what you agree was enough to discipline Brigadier Mkhwanazi?
It would have possibly impacted, in terms of the evidence trail and possibly...
You love evidence trail, Brigadier... I'm sorry. You love this evidence trail. Yes, let me listen.
May I, Chair?
Yes, please.
Chair, on page 14 of my affidavit, on 62, I think earlier on in answering it, but we asked that, did you give a way forward?
Which paragraph? Which
paragraph? 6.2. I think we referred to that earlier.
Yes.
Right. And I said, in my engagements with Colonel Erasmus, if investigations were complete, charges could be proceeded with without extending the suspension. So, in what has been presented by in the docket itself, mine was to say to him, you can still proceed with the charges without extending these. And then you come back to 63. If the investigation required further statements, those should be obtained without delay. So, in all I'm trying to do, I'm pushing for credibility in terms of the way we finalize the process. If you relied only on the MOU and said, okay, now these are the donation process that was followed, the fact is Chris Steyn brings in, although he says the statements came through, or the MOU came to his knowledge, Mkhwanazi, which I agree, misrepresented Chris Steyn on that basis. But then he has a curveball, but this was the process. So surely he should have applied his mind and seen that this document is not approved. Did he merely take it by the word? And that is what I'm saying, that in terms of the evidence trail, did he merely look at an unsigned document? You can see there's no signatures there, yet he proceeds to do what he did.
You see, even in response to questions by Commissioner Baloyi, you did the same thing of suggesting that no. Actually, the chief of police was in the wrong here, basically saying he's the one who ought to have been charged. And now again, you seem to be suggesting the same thing, but this time about Mr. Chris Steyn. And the one person who is not in the wrong in your book is Brigadier Mkhwanazi. Everybody else is in the wrong, but not Brigadier Mkhwanazi.
Respectfully, Chair.
Yes.
I've said it very clearly. Mkhwanazi misrepresented.
I corrected Commissioner Spies when he said Mkhwanazi. There's no A there. It's Mkhwanazi. Mkhwanazi, please.
Mkhwanazi is in the wrong, or was in the wrong, in the misrepresentation. And I Chair, again, I'm focusing on the fact is...
Did you ever say that anyway? You accept now that he was in the wrong, and you've accepted a few questions back when I engaged you that he could be disciplined on that. Are you on record anywhere as having said that? Nowhere. Are you?
Chair, because I was focusing on our city's case.
On your evidence trail.
On my evidence trail.
Which you so love, yes.
Yeah. Chair, my apologies, Chair, if I'm offending or
yes.
But if you allow me, then...
Yes,
I was in that environment. Mkhwanazi, I already accepted there were allegations within him. That is why I didn't focus on him and what he's... I focused on what is our case as a city. What do we need to ensure that we cover up all the loopholes so that we have a successful case against Mkhwanazi. The same issue was my concern on the chief of police. And if he says, I'm hearing now that he says that the document never came before, he denied it. I looked at that stage of the affidavit of Jermaine Fortin. I looked at the affidavit of Lethal Tyres, his secretary, who printed those documents and left there. So those are the issues in the engagement. So in terms of getting all the witnesses, so if Chief of Police comes now and says, no, I was not aware of it, then surely Chief of Police will be called in some way to answer, even not as an implicated or accused person, but as in the witness environment, which he would have been testifying. So in order to strengthen the city's case, Chair,
who denied what document? Somewhere in this response you said somebody denied some document. Who denied what document?
If I may, I don't know if I'm quoting what you stated Commissioner Baloyi, when you said Chief came and said that the documents did not come. Maybe, I don't know if I misunderstood that.
All right. No, I just wanted to be. You see, what confuses me is that my focus is on Brigadier Mkhwanazi. Now, when you go on and quite wide, I get confused along the way.
Again, Chair.
Now, did you, in this lengthy advice to Colonel Erasmus, did you anywhere say, of all the things I'm saying, but we have a good case on which Brigadier Mkhwanazi may be disciplined, and that case is that he has misrepresented that there is in existence the donations memorandum. Chair. On that, we have a good case. Did you say that to Erasmus? Did you say that to Erasmus?
Chair, I did not say that
to Colonel Erasmus. I'm very sorry for not using his
say that to Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus, because I've accepted that the Brigadier's Mkhwanazi's statements also confirm that he did misrepresent to Christine. My focus has always been on what is our case, because when I find that when people in an environment in many courts will come through and can change, so we can secure from a cities-wide position and secure that Christine in no way puts the city's case at risk. And these are the other issues. So that is what my interest was. So when I said to Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus, in paragraph 62, if the investigation was complete, so if he felt it was complete, proceed without extending the suspension, because...
You see, my difficulty is that of all the many things you said, and of all the many difficulties you said were facing the EMPD, not once do you say, but we have a good case here. That's my problem.
Chair,
it's like you just did not want to make any pronouncement against Brigadier Mkhwanazi. So of all the many things, the difficulties and everything else that you raise, not once do you say, however, we have a very good case against Brigadier Mkhwanazi on this narrow or on this limited aspect. Nowhere.
Chair, as I said, for me, engaging with him, I accepted the MOU story, I accepted the fact of the operational plan issues. My focus was then on us concretizing our case. And hence I said to him, if you feel that all the investigations are complete...
That's about your case. That's about your case. What I'm raising with you is about your case. It may not have been about the entire case, but it was a crucial part of the case because it related to the registration of the motor vehicles. That was a crucial issue. That was a key part of the case against Brigadier Mkhwanazi. Why are you silent about that?
Chair, it was a key point, it was a key issue with regard to the case against Mkhwanazi for the donations. The issue would be on the witnesses of Christine, because that is, it's not about him just being disciplined, Chair. It's about him testifying on behalf of the city. Says that you are I've received a letter of donation.
Who testifying for the city? Who?
Christine.
I'm talking about Brigadier Mkhwanazi, the case which is quite strong. You've accepted yourself. You've accepted that on this, there's a misrepresentation.
Yes.
And you've also accepted, quite early on when I was engaging you, you've accepted that this was a prosecutable case. This was a case on which he could be disciplined. You've accepted that.
Chair, I confirm that.
Yes.
I've accepted that.
Yes.
But beyond that, beyond a prosecutable case, the actual process to continue with the prosecution and to make sure that there's a successful prosecution, That is where my focus was on. So in engaging with any Erasmus, this is what I'm saying to him. How do we close the loopholes? If the witness that's coming to show that he processed the donations, and then he received a MOU which was unsigned, at the very face value, he should have realized that it's not approved and raised a question with
on this limited aspect. You did not need Mr. Chief Wicks. Agree? On this narrow, on what I've been referring to as a limited or narrow issue, you did not need Mr. Chief Wicks.
No, correct? On that issue, we did not need, we did not need Jeff Wicks.
Yes,
but
okay.
Remember, I was looking at this docket and the possible charges. There were almost six charges, I think.
You've already said you did not need him. On this narrow, limited issue, you did not need Deputy Chief Mzolo.
No, I did not need Mzolo.
Yes. Yeah. On this narrow issue, you did not need DCP Kwabe.
In terms of speaking to the donations, especially with the 300,000 donations, what we understood by the process.
Throughout in my debate with you, leading up to your agreement that he could be disciplined, Brigadier Mkhwanazi could be disciplined. Throughout, there's been no mention of a statement by Mr. Kwabe. Your agreement was based on the fact that there was a misrepresentation by Brigadier Mkhwanazi, and that just on that basis he could be disciplined. That has nothing to do with DCP Kwabe. Do you agree?
On the narrow constraint you referred to,
yes,
based on Mkhwanazi's.
I deliberately referred to it as a limited or narrow issue. Yeah. Do you agree that that did not need DCP Kwabe?
No, on that particular issue, no. But Christian was important in that case.
Thank you. You didn't need him. That's your answer. Then the letter from Fleet. Yes, definitely. You did need Mr. Chris Stein, but I'm not sure about the letter. But definitely, he would have had to be a witness. But I'm not sure about the letter you are referring to.
Paragraph 43. In the middle of May 2023, Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus raised concerns with me about the possible expiration of Brigadier Mkhwanazi's 3-month suspension period. The suspension was due to expire on 24 May 2023. I advised him that if the EMPD required an extension of Brigadier Mkhwanazi's suspension period, they must submit a written motivation signed by Chief Mapiyeye. That request must then be addressed to Ms. Kasheka, HODHR. I received the extension request and discussed it with Ms. Kasheka, and she agreed to sign and extend the suspension. On or about 22 May 2023, it was submitted to Ms. Kasheka. On the night of 23 May 2023, I received a missed call from Dr. Mashazi. I called her back some 30 minutes after the timestamp of the missed call. She had found out about the request for the extension of Brigadier Mkhwanazi's suspension period. In that call, Dr. Mashazi was very aggressive and accused me of being personal, hateful, and that I was targeting Brigadier Mkhwanazi. She held at me and told me that Chief Mapiyeye and I hate Julius. Then if we can go to paragraph 47. I calmly explained to Dr. Mashazi that I don't even have the power to suspend employees and extend their suspension periods. I attempted to explain that the powers vest in Ms. Nkasheka as the Human Resources HOD. Dr. Mashazi shouted that she will also call her, referring to Ms. Nkasheka, and will tell her that Mkhwanazi is coming back to work. And then if we skip the next paragraph, go to 49. I immediately tried to call Chief Mapiyeye, but I could not reach him. Finally, we spoke later that day, and Chief Mapiyeye informed me that he had also received a nasty telephone call from Dr. Mashazi. He shared that Dr. Mashazi had told him that in no uncertain terms that this Brigadier Mkhwanazi must come back to work. On that day, I also attempted to reach Ms. Kasheka unsuccessfully. She responded to me late that night. At around 0049, I received a WhatsApp from Ms. Kasheka saying, please draft a resumption of duty letter for Brigadier Mkhwanazi as he is resuming duties today. She mentioned in another message that I hope Chief contacted him. Now, I want to place you in this sequence of events. Were you the person that told Dr. Mkhwanazi about the request for an extension?
No. I spoke to Dr. Mkhwanazi, Dr. Mkhwanazi about the considerations I had in that document. There was nothing about extension. The only extension that request came to me was to support was from Erasmus. The issue of the extensions I know nothing about. As I said, in terms of the process going forward, it would have been, the ultimate decider would have been HOD-HR. I assisted about 2 weeks or within the last week of May to assist in terms of a compliance comment to support the extension. I was not involved in that process.
Now, you would have seen what he says in his statement, that he was approached in the middle of May already regarding the extension. I think my difficulty in accepting the version that you are putting forward before the Commission, that Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus approached you on guidance regarding the suspension, is that, or the extension of the suspension, is that at this point a request was already in the process of being made. As you had said earlier on, the HR process for the extension was already underway. So it is difficult to understand why somebody from internal affairs, Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus, who had now given the matter over to Mr. Ngiza, who is an HR specialist, you will accept that, correct? Yeah. And then would come to you, somebody that hasn't been involved in the process at all, to ask you for guidance on what could possibly be the eve of the decision being made. But the request was already submitted to Mr. Shekhar.
Chair, I'm not sure. As I said, this was when I looked at the statements from Neza, but that he came to me to support. Maybe this is why he understood the difficulties and he asked if I could support such a thing, because I am not aware from the process going to the HR via DH Neza, as per what you said. I only know that when he came to me, Colonel Erasmus came to me, it was about can I support the extension of the suspension. These are uncovered later on during the evidence and the record.
No, Mr. Behari, you said when you spoke to him, he told you that the extension process was already with HR. That was your evidence earlier on. And he was just coming to you for guidance. Yeah. Now, why is he coming to you for guidance on a process that is already underway and a decision which, according to Mr. Ngiza, Ms. Kasheka is in support of? She's going to approve the extension. Then what happens is you get involved and all of a sudden there's a change of heart. Ms. Kasheka gets told, according to Mr. Ngiza, that she mustn't approve the extension.
Chair, I've not discussed the issue of the extension request to City Manager. I discussed with City Manager giving an update on the issues I found in the file. I did not talk to the extension issues in terms of granting. I'll only explain to what my discussions were with Erasmus in terms of what I found in the file. Erasmus came to me to support the extension. Perhaps he thought that I could have assisted them and it would have made the decision of Kasheka easier. I wasn't aware of all of the other engagements in terms of the threats and so on. I wasn't aware of this.
Well, of the role players involved, it can only be one of two people, possibly, that told Dr. Mkhwanazi. It was either you or it was Ms. Kasheka. But we know at some point she was in favor of the extension and then she changes her mind. Chief Mapiyeye wouldn't have told, and neither would Ms. Ngiza, because they say she found out about it.
I mentioned to Dr. Mkhwanazi, that there was a request to look at the docket to support an extension. These are the issues I've picked up. Beyond that, I was not involved in the further process. So I had a discussion to talk about the documents that I found and the process I found, which needed to be addressed further, and not to, because if that was the case, I wouldn't have then proceeded to look at suggesting let's proceed immediately with the disciplinary process. If there was something that I was waiting because I suggested to Henny Erasmus, Lieutenant Colonel, that you can proceed immediately. If it was a matter of me now trying to impact that and giving her update, why would I suggest something like this to proceed immediately?
Mr. Behari, in all that you've just said now, you have admitted that you informed Dr. Mkhwanazi about the request for the extension of the suspension.
Chair, I mentioned earlier on when you asked me, did you give an update who you communicated with? And I did communicate to Dr. Mkhwanazi. She was, in terms of giving an update on the issues. So when I said to Erasmus, it was not my intent to say, no, stop it. I do not know what was going to be the resultant impact of that. Because I have to give an update to the HOD, to the city manager to say, this is where I found, I think we must concretize our case this way. And I've spoken to Erasmus about that. Hence, I suggested in paragraph 62, let's proceed to Erasmus, Lieutenant Colonel, let's proceed immediately.
Why do you need to give an update to the city manager? She's not part of the process. According to Mr. Ngiza, he isn't even authorized to grant the suspension, the extension. It must be motivated by Chief Mapiyeye and approved by Mr. Ngiza. The city manager has no involvement. Kasheka, my apologies. Kasheka. So on what basis then do you feel that you should inform the city manager about a process which, when she gave evidence here herself, said that she doesn't get involved in that process?
The city manager doesn't get involved in the process because it's delegated to the HOD. But when that initial suspension happened, the initial suspension, I think sometimes in February, Gasheka, the city manager was aware of the process and that there was suspension. There are these allegations, there are serious allegations about CAT VIP and so on. So my response to city manager Dr. Mkhwanazi was as a result of her being aware of that process. So she knew about the involvement or the suspension, which at the beginning was involved, and I understand she knew about it and there was no objection at that stage. But to go further than from what I involved, everything that we deal with, and you escalate it and you say to the city manager, I've dealt with the stuff, this is where the process is. I didn't know that thereafter what was the take on that.
Mr. Behari, why did you feel the need to go inform the city manager about the request by Chris Erasmus? Because it has nothing to do with her. It's an HR issue that can be dealt with by HR people. You've already said she's aware of the serious allegations. So you don't need to tell her about those. They come to you as head of legal, seeking legal advice on the extension of a suspension. That has nothing to do with the city manager. You then go and tell her that Erasmus is seeking the extension of the suspension. So the very first question that was put to you, was it you? It could only have been you. Your initial answer was no. But then in the course of answering other questions, you actually admitted that it was you who told the city manager about the request to extend the suspension.
Chair, I think when it was at the very outset, when I was asked about who did you brief on it, I mentioned city manager and I mentioned the HOD. Now, in terms of the relationship, when I spoke to Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus, after that, I had to brief the city manager, say, right, on this issue, critical issue, this is what the next stage is. I'm asked to support an extension, and I've dealt with it and engaged with Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus. So thereafter, whatever happened, transpired from there, who was called and so on, I don't know, Chair.
But the question is, why do you brief the city manager? This level of employee, Kwanazi, doesn't fall with, as I've understood the evidence, he's not in the category of people where the city manager becomes involved with his disciplinary action or disciplinary action against him. And that the city manager confirmed that doesn't belong there. You speak to Erasmus, as Commissioner Khumalo says, because Erasmus has come to you to ask for guidance according to you. Why are you discussing this with the city manager? It's not, if you're concerned about briefing the city manager to keep her in the loop, it seems to me that's a job for HOD, human resources, not your burden. You don't get to grant extensions of suspension. You have nothing to do with this process other than Erasmus has come and spoken to you now. Why are you speaking to the city manager about a mid-level manager?
Chair, the issue was greater than a mid-level manager. The issue was about the involvement of CAT VIP and Medicare 24 in our city. The city manager at that level must, when she decided to go on and approve the initial, or talk to the suspension initially, would have to be briefed into the process of flow in terms of what are we uncovering, how are we supporting that to finalize the disciplinary.
Is your short answer that Dr. Mashazi was involved with this disciplinary steps and process against Brigadier Mkhwanazi? Is that the short answer to what I've said?
The initial complaint came through, it became aware of the entire city. She's the accounting officer of the city.
Yes.
So as that, there was an interest in terms of what is happening with the matter.
No,
so,
she didn't ask you. You went, your evidence is, you met with her and then you told her this, among other things. So this is not a case of she called you, at least that's not what you've said, that she called you and asked you what's happening. You were talking to her and you mentioned this.
Yes.
And the question is, but this is none of her business at this point. There's an ongoing disciplinary process, and all that you've been asked, by the way, is to, according to you, to give guidance on extending a suspension. That's all you've been asked. Erasmus didn't approach you to discuss and get advice on the merits of this disciplinary action. He's come to you in your statement to get guidance on the extension. What is there to discuss with the city manager? Why are you speaking to the city manager about this? And I want to propose something to you, that you're discussing this with her because you know her interest. Interest not as neutral, but because she's close to Mkhwanazi. You know she doesn't want Mkhwanazi to be disciplined. That's why you're talking to her about this. I want to propose that. That's a real reason why you discuss this with her, when in fact it's none of her business at this point. It's still under Gasheka's and Niza's control to run that process up to where they wish to take it to finality. So it has nothing to do with her, and you knew that. You know that she's not involved with it. And so I'm suggesting to you, the reason you discuss it with her is because you knew her direct interest in the disciplinary action against Mkhwanazi, 1. 2, you knew that she doesn't want disciplinary action to be taken against him, and that's the only reason that you talked to her about it.
Chair, on point 1 and 2, I don't support that. I don't agree with it. I did not know what her direct interest was, and I didn't. There was nothing about not taking disciplinary action against Mkhwanazi, because if that was the case, it would have been stopped in the previous time when the suspension was started in February, when there was approved. I would have stopped then. My interest was, and I briefed city manager on all critical issues relating to the city. Every matter that comes through in which I've dealt with, I give the city manager an update to say I've dealt with it. On this matter, to say that Colonel Erasmus came to me, we're looking at how we can finalize make sure that the charges are concrete, to make sure what evidence is required, and that is what the extent of my discussion. It was very brief in that regard. Nothing further. I was not aware of any other interest the city manager had, and I was not part of any other interest. It is about just looking at, and on a daily basis, Chair, on many matters, as long as it's the interest of the city, we give that briefing, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Behari.
And then you say you advise the city manager on the shortcomings of the city's case against Mkhwanazi. So in other words, what you state in paragraph 56 to 61, that's what you told the city manager.
Chair, in stating that to the city manager, it was about how we can cure the defects, how we can look at finalizing the process, which I discussed with Erasmus. That is what my engagement was. Because my interest was to see that we do not have a case where we don't cover all our bases. And that is what since I've been there in the city, in all our cases, not only in this one here, but in all matters, whether it's whichever space. So I did tell the CM we need to cover on these issues. The other issues are found, we need to cover them.
You see, Mr. Behari, exactly what you said in the middle of your answer. We don't have a case. That's exactly what Ms. Mashazi, Dr. Mashazi said, that she was acting on your advice.
Yes.
You advised her that the city does not have a case against Mkhwanazi. In fact, she went on TV to say something to that effect.
Chair, based on the circumstances as it stood, I mean, the narrow constraints which were mentioned by the Chair and so on individual charges, yes. But holistically, in terms of what I required, and this is what I briefed the city manager on, to say that there are still these issues that we needed to finalize.
I mean, even Gwabe's affidavit, in paragraph 3, he says Mkhwanazi misrepresented the facts to him. Mkhwanazi said to him, there is a signed memorandum. And it's on 277 or 177. You've been there before, so you must have seen it. 277.
Chair.
You can read it, it's there.
Yeah,
Paragraph 3.
I don't discount what you're saying, Chair. Mkhwanazi contacted me indicating that the EMPD had signed a memorandum.
He says,
Yeah.
Mkhwanazi said there's a signed memorandum.
Yeah.
So everything Gwabe says about donations happens because Mkhwanazi misrepresented the facts to him. Mkhwanazi misrepresented the fact that there's a memorandum that is signed.
Chair.
You know there's no signed memorandum.
I know that, Chair.
Yes.
And Gwabe, as a divisional head, ought to have done his process and asked him, where's the signed memorandum?
You see, you're doing exactly what Chair warned you not to do. You are asked about Mkhwanazi. You deflect, you go to the people he dealt with and you say they are the ones who should have done something. Mkhwanazi should not have misrepresented the facts. It's as simple as that.
Chair, I agree that he should not have misrepresented. But there must be some level of due diligence to the person who is receiving that representation, who is in a position of power and knowledge within the city. It cannot be that everybody comes and says to you, this is what, that you go on and make decisions and take action without verifying the sources, without verifying the facts on which are presented to you.
Mr. Behari, I've said this before, at the risk of repeating myself. When you realize that all those people have not done what they are supposed to do, the answer is to investigate and charge them. The answer is not to say, because they did something wrong in the past, we don't have a case against Mkhwanazi. That is incorrect.
Chair, that will amount to several separations of the process. Remember, this arises from one incident. It arises from one incident. It arises from the engagements of the donations. It arises from CAT, VIP, and Medicare 24 being in the city. Now, if we're going to start doing individual charges, when we could have holistically sorted out who has done what, who could have been accountable, because if there's going to be denials, why should we go with a weak case and then I'll say, okay, no, we can charge the other people. We'll investigate. That is one of the issues we're trying to curtail, that you can't have too many processes arising out of one incident, Chair.
Are you going to show us a memorandum where you say to the City of Ekurhuleni or the city manager, let's investigate and charge all these people?
Chair, there's no such memorandum.
Because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist
because you didn't tell her that these people should be investigated. You didn't say to her, on the face of these documents, Stein did something wrong. We must investigate him. On the face of these documents, Gwabe did something wrong. We must investigate him. On the face of these documents, Mapiyaya did something wrong in relation to the draft MOUs that were sent to him. We must investigate. You never did any of that. What you said to the city manager was that we don't have a good case against Mkhwanazi. And that is why we are here and talking to you today.
Chair, the progress or the engagement of the city manager will say, I've received this report. These are what the issues I've looked at. Now, in us finalizing that, would have looked at, is there other cases? And hence my engagement with Erasmus was. So at that stage, I didn't go to the extent of saying, that's because they would have came in as a witness for the city. Gwabe said this. as a witness for the city, Stein has said this. Now, if Erasmus then was to finalize, that would be risking our case against Mkhwanazi. That was the focus. We're looking at the case against Mkhwanazi. If subsequently we found that there was any statements that were inconsistent, we could have went through that. But the main issue here was to cover the serious issue of Mkhwanazi, the donations, the CAT VIP, and who was involved in the process. It could have also included Chief of Police. It could have also included Reverse Peace, because Mgwabe, Mzolo. So this is what I'm saying, that from my side, it was about having holistically to look at how we're going to deal with the matter. My brief update was with the city manager to say these are what the concerns I have. Thank you.
So was your difficulty that only Kwanazi is being charged and the chief and Spies and others are not being charged? I'm asking on the back of the last thing you said now.
Chair, that's not the difficulty I had. I was happy with Chief Mkhwanazi being charged for whatever it is. But there was much more serious, and I said, Mkhwanazi, but what else? Because there's much more incidents of...
Why are you asking what else when an individual is being charged? Sorry, I don't understand. An employee is accused of serious misconduct, and the process has started. According to you, the city manager supported it at the beginning, and indeed, that's the evidence of Mr. Ngiza and Chief Mapie, that before any steps were taken against Brigadier Mkhwanazi, they went to speak to the city manager, and when they were asked the question, both witnesses, when they were asked, why did you do that? They said, we did that because we know that they're close, they have a close relationship, and we didn't want to get into trouble about it. We wanted to inform her in advance, and she was supportive of whatever action we are going to take. So we know that, and you've just confirmed she knew from the get-go. Disciplinary, certain steps are taken against this one employee. Why do you now, when you are asked by Mr. Erasmus to guide him about an extension, you now go and speak to the city manager? Why in that speaking to the city manager do you now start saying, what about the others? As if it has any consequence whatsoever for disciplinary steps being taken against the individual.
It had no consequence, and I didn't raise that with the city manager. The issue was raised with Erasmus in our conversation. Which are the other witnesses that are outstanding? Because the evidence is pointing, to say that CAT VIP and all were in the city. And I'm taking it back to the issue of the State of the City Address. Who was involved in the State of the City Address? It was also Mkhwanazi that was involved in the State of the City Address. And that is why I'm saying it is a very serious issue, but you're focusing on a donation issue? Yes, by all means. You're focusing on the MOU issue? By all means. But then what is the process that was followed from the State of the City Address? Who are all the people who should be informed? That was never discussed with the city manager. The city manager gave an update as to accordingly, Mgwabe, we need to sort this matter out, we need to finalize this. So we concretize our case against Mkhwanazi. If it came up later on, there were other officials involved from the further investigation, then so be it. It could have taken place. I didn't give a comment or a memorandum to the city manager in that regard.
Okay. So you when you spoke to the city manager, you told her that the case against Mr. Mkhwanazi is not good. You would have said that because that's what you advised Mr. Erasmus.
Yeah. I said there was concerns that I had on these issues, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the letter that you were referring to earlier on, that you had received on the 22nd of June, even though it's dated the 21st.
Yes.
And if we look at, I think it is at the second page, the second paragraphs undated. This indicated period of 3 months must be before the 12th of July 2023. Taking into consideration the charge sheets needs to be served as per. And then he says section 7.8, the employer representative shall within 5 days of his appointment formulate and serve the charges to be brought against the employee. So he's setting out for you the steps that must be followed. And then he says, the delay is of great concern as the alleged misconduct was exposed by the media. A very senior officer is involved and is of such a serious nature that it will permanently damage not only the reputation of the EMPD, but also of the City of Ekurhuleni should the postponement of serving the charge sheet be furthermore postponed. A perception is also created that the officer involved and the very serious misconduct exposed are being protected and swept under the carpet. Your considered noting urgent attention and way forward is appreciated. What did you do about this letter?
Chair, on the 21st, I had approximately 1 hour engagement with the chief. And we got all the information where I explained to him, Chief, firstly, on paragraph 3, Chief, 24th of May 2023 is when it expired. The suspension would have expired. But give me the timelines, because what happened is, if you want me to deal with the issue, I've told you what are the problems that I think this is how it could also expose in terms of you getting involved in different areas. The MOU came to your attention. I heard later on he denied it, but the MOU came to your attention. There's no explanation what happened. Other issues of the State of the City address, you noticed that there was other companies or other employees from other companies there.
Mr. Behari, you're doing it again, and I don't mean to interrupt you. You can explain yourself afterwards. I just want to know what was your response to this letter, because you're telling me about your discussion before the letter comes. So if you look at the first paragraph of the letter, on page 182, it says, further to our discussion regarding the above matter. So this is after you had told him all of what you're telling us now. He sends you the letter because he says, as discussed earlier today and agreed upon, that I shall provide you with a copy of the internal dossier listing all the documentary evidence whereupon the decision to proceed with the disciplinary matter has been based, and that you will peruse this during the 22nd of June 2023 and provide a way forward urgently as per the background listed here under. So what was your response to this letter?
I did not respond to the letter because the dossier did not come to me. The documents, he says here, on the 21st, which is served to me, I shall provide you with the dossier of the documents. So he didn't send me all those documents. There was other explanations which you have fully in the meeting which we discussed, the timelines that were followed and so on. So I did not respond further because I've explained to the chief what needs to be done and how we can address the matter. There was no need for me to go further to tell him again, to respond to another letter to him to say how we can be. All the things the chief has said to me here was contained in the discussion on the 21st as well.
Mr. Behari, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to convince 4 lawyers that you as a lawyer didn't respond to this when you didn't receive the documents. So you don't get the documents back from him and you're not requesting it.
I did not get the documents from Chief. He needed me to respond respond under very strict timelines. I had to give him a response by taking into consideration the above stipulation. It means that the charge sheet must be served on or before 22nd of June 2023. So a document is served before me. I had not got the documents.
No, Mr. Behari, in his the second paragraph, after he says further to our discussion, he says, and that you will peruse this during the 22nd. It was an agreement and agreed upon that I shall provide you with the copy and you will peruse during the 22nd of June 2023. So you knew about the tight timeline. And you don't get the documents from him on the 22nd, but you don't follow up with him and say, there were no documents attached to your letter, or when am I getting the documents? You want an answer as soon as possible, but I don't have the documents.
Chair, what was conveyed to me at that stage was that the appointment of the presiding officer mid-June, in our letter engagement, he wanted me to, I said to him, I'll look at the documents urgently. The documents never came to me. The issue of taking into consideration of the above stipulation means the charge sheet must be served on or before the 22nd. That was never discussed. So you're asking me to assist you and I'll look over it on the 22nd. But you did not say to me that we have to finalize this by the 22nd of June. And that is where, as I said, I spoke to the chief. So if the chief did not take it up further and bring it to my attention and say, let's go ahead, you serve a document to me on the 22nd of, so the letter dated, you serve it to me on the 22nd of June. And then you say to me, it has to be done, the charge sheet must be served on or before the 22nd of June. What can I do as a head of legal in terms of serving a charge sheet or not serving a charge sheet?
But then, Mr. Behari, you say to him, I haven't had time to have a look at the documentation. What is it that you want to do, Chief? And then you have a discussion. You don't ignore him. He's telling you that this is an urgent matter that needs to be attended to. There's been a delay which is recorded here, which is clearly not of his doing, because he's complaining about the delay. He says, I have a concern about the delay. And you're delaying him further. And I find it hard to believe that a lawyer of your many years of experience, 28 years as you say, when you don't receive supporting documents, you don't go back to the lay person and say to him, you haven't given me the documents to consider. Bearing in mind, you have considered these documents before. He has nothing new. There's nothing new that he has in these documents that Lieutenant Colonel Erasmus didn't already give to you a month earlier.
Chair, the opening paragraph or the second paragraph, as discussed earlier today, when we had our meeting on the 21st, I shall provide you with a copy of the internal dossier listing all the documentary evidence whereupon the decision to proceed with the disciplinary has been based. That is, what then was met on the 12th of April when NISA decided to proceed with disciplinary. So there's the additional documents that he was supposed to have proceeded. And then he served the document to me on the 22nd of June. Taking into consideration the above stipulation, it means that the charge sheet must be served on or before the 22nd of June. On the 22nd of June, I had no documents. I was not even at work on the 22nd of June. I only came back the following Tuesday. If he had contacted me and said, no, but where are you? We need to do this, I would have followed it. It is a two-way issue. I have all other issues to deal with, other rhythms, you mentioned that. But that is the reality of my environment. I cannot go, if a chief is committed to give me documents, chief is committed to follow up. So even though he's a lay person in terms of the law itself, I don't know to what extent he's involved as a lay person, but the commitment which he made to me was to bring the documents. And I cannot go and chase after the chief. He's a senior manager at my level. He's committed to do that issues. He did not do it. I was not there on the 22nd. I left out of the province. I got back on, but he could have still called me and said to me, but can we not finalize this? But if it had to be on the 22nd, if the deadline was 22nd, what else could I have done to assist the chief when he knows that this, and the 22nd deadline only came to me after this. Taking into consideration of the above, it means that the charge sheet must be served on the 22nd. That is where.
Mr. Behari, if you look at page 181, someone acknowledges receipt of the dossier. Who is that, Engelbrecht?
That's the PA, Louise Engelbrecht.
That's your PA?
Yeah.
So it was delivered on the 22nd because he or she acknowledges receipt on the 22nd of June. So you can't say the chief did not deliver the dossier. Maybe you didn't see it because you say you were out of the office, but someone in your office accepted it.
I was out on the day, which she acknowledged receipt of that, but it was delivered on the 22nd, Chair.
Yes, no, that's fine. Let's take it step by step. You say he never delivered it, and I'm correcting you to say, well, according to Engelbrecht, it was delivered to your office on the 22nd.
Chair, it was delivered on the 22nd. By then I was out of the office. But he delivered the entire documents that so these were the complete internal affairs EMPD investigation dossier. The engagement between us was that he will look at the documents that led to the 12th of April decision to proceed. So that is the extent where I looked at any additional, because we've covered all the other documents. My engagement with him during the meeting was on the issues as we looked at what are the challenges that we could foresee. So I was not there to correct the documents, to say that, Chief, this is lacking and so on. But it is impossible on that day to serve the charges on the 22nd, and what kind of, what kind of engagement would I have done to intervene in the serving of the charges?
But you see, in that first paragraph of that letter, he says it was agreed upon that he will provide an internal dossier, and then you will peruse this during the 22nd. And I haven't heard you deny that there was such an agreement.
No, there was, in the discussion that we had, Chair.
It was agreed
I
that
would
you
look
would
at it.
peruse it on the 22nd.
But not realizing that it had to be done by the 22nd, Chair, because